Welcome to the Morning Walk with Murty Digital Stroll. If you are sitting there listening right now, I am willing to bet you have a dozen browser tabs open on your computer at this very second.
Oh, easily. Probably closer to 24 for most of us.
Right, exactly. You've got, an article you meant to read, an email draft you totally abandoned, a video paused halfway through, and maybe a spreadsheet you're just actively avoiding. We all do it.
We do. It's human nature at this point.
Yeah, but today on this Gurukul session, we're looking at the hidden physical toll that all that digital clutter is taking on your hardware, specifically your laptop's battery life.
It is a massive issue, really, because our behavioral habits they've completely outpaced our hardware's ability to keep up.
Totally.
I mean, the browser isn't just a window to the internet anymore. It has effectively become a secondary operating system.
Right. And, to understand how our tools are shaping our hardware's lifespan, we're going to frame this content through the Digital Prism. We aren't just summarizing text today. We are extracting the legacy code of Project Antaryami.
Exactly. And as the architect of Antaryami and, mentor of the Antaryami VA Academy, I find this stuff endlessly fascinating. To do this, we're looking at a July 2026 article by Pankil Shah from Make Use Of. It's titled, "I Switched from Chrome to Edge and Finally Understood Why My Laptop Battery Died So Fast."
Okay, let's unpack this, because as the strategic auditor for this project, looking at things from a digital migration focus, I am genuinely excited about how something as mundane as the web browser can drastically alter hardware performance.
Oh yeah, it's not a small change either.
Right. We are talking about like a 1 or 2% shift here. We are talking about a 20% increase in battery life simply by migrating from Chrome to Edge.
A 20% jump just from changing a software habit is wild.
It really is. So our mission today is to figure out the actual mechanics behind that 20%. We need to look under the hood at how these two browsers handle memory management, the reality of operating system integration, and finally, what the tech community actually thinks about this shift.
Because the comments section on this article reveals a profound philosophical divide among users, which I want to get into later as the wisdom seeker of our Gurukul 2.0 focus.
Definitely. So starting with the author of the piece, Pankil. He's a freelance writer, which means he represents like the ultimate stress test for a browser.
Oh, for sure. The worst case scenario.
Right. All of his research, his communication, daily work, even his music streaming, it all happens in the cloud. He admits that at any given point, he keeps north of 30 tabs open across 2 or 3 windows.
Which is a huge computational load. I mean, 30 active tabs. To understand the battery drain there, we really have to look at what an open tab actually is today.
Yeah, break that down for us, because it's not just a picture on a screen.
Exactly. Yeah. A web page today is not a static document like it was in, the early 2000s. It's a live, breathing application. Even when you aren't looking at it, an active tab is constantly running JavaScript in the background.
Constantly.
Yeah, it's polling servers for new notifications, it's refreshing background ads, maintaining active network connections, and every single one of those microscopic actions requires the CPU to wake up, execute a command, and then go back to sleep.
And every time that CPU wakes up, it is physically pulling electrical current from your laptop's lithium-ion battery. So how do Chrome and Edge handle this constant demand differently?
Well, they both try to manage inactivity, right? But their thresholds are entirely different.
Right.
Like Chrome has a memory saver feature that puts inactive tabs to sleep, but it waits several minutes before suspending an idle text.
Several minutes is a lifetime in computing terms.
It really is. Edge, on the other hand, is significantly more aggressive. You can configure Edge to put a tab to sleep after just 30 seconds of inactivity.
What's fascinating here is the compound effect of that seemingly small time differential.
Yes, exactly.
Because a 30-second delay versus a 5-minute delay, it might not sound revolutionary for a single web page, but multiply that behavior across 30 tabs, constantly being clicked in and out of over an 8-hour workday.
It adds up incredibly fast.
It does. By forcing those background processes into a deep sleep almost immediately, Edge halts that endless cycle of background network polling and JavaScript execution. I mean, Microsoft claims these sleeping tabs can cut memory usage by up to 87%.
And CPU usage by a staggering 99%.
That's insane. And the author actually noted an immediate drop in system unresponsiveness the moment he made the switch.
Think of it this way. Think of Chrome as a dad who walks around turning off the lights in empty rooms like 5 minutes after everyone leaves. Whereas Edge is on a motion sensor that just kills the power the second you step into the hallway.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize the power draw, because a CPU operates by flipping billions of microscopic transistors on and off every single second.
Right.
So whenever Chrome leaves a tab awake for an extra 4.5 minutes, those transistors are constantly flipping just to keep that page alive.
Exactly. By shutting the lights off at the 30-second mark, Edge is literally stopping physical hardware activity, which translates directly to milliwatts of power saved over the course of the day.
But passive management, putting tabs to sleep, that only solves half the problem.
It does, yeah. Because putting tabs to sleep is great for the pages you aren't looking at. But what happens when you actively need multiple heavy tabs open at the exact same time?
Which happens a lot. And that is where we move from passive sleeping to active resource throttling, which is a massive differentiator in this digital migration.
Huge differentiator. This is where Edge introduces a feature called resource controls. Instead of just, hoping the browser behaves itself, resource controls allow the user to set a definitive hard cap on the amount of RAM the browser is allowed to consume.
And RAM is your system's highly efficient short-term memory, right? And web browsers are notorious for basically expanding to consume whatever RAM is available.
They'll eat everything if you let them.
Exactly. So to give you a specific example from the source, the author was running a Lenovo laptop equipped with 24 gigabytes of RAM. He went into Edge and set a hard cap at 15 gigabytes.
He basically drew a line in the sand.
Right. He told the browser it could not cross that threshold under any circumstances.
And the mechanism behind that threshold is absolutely critical for battery life. When Edge approaches that 15 gigabyte limit, it actively begins discarding tabs to claw back memory.
Whereas Chrome doesn't do that natively.
No, it doesn't. Chrome lacks this native hard limit. Without a third-party extension, Chrome will just keep eating available RAM until there's nothing left. And when system runs out of RAM, it's forced to do something called paging.
Right, and paging is terrible for battery life. As the architect of Antaryami, can you walk us through the physical reality of what happens when a browser eats all the RAM and forces the computer to page?
Gladly. So RAM sits very close to the CPU on the motherboard, and it requires very little electricity to read and write data. When your browser consumes all of it, the operating system kind of panics.
It runs out of room.
Exactly. It still needs a place to store short-term data, so it starts writing that temporary data to your laptop's hard drive, usually a solid-state drive.
Okay.
This physical shift from RAM to the storage drive requires data to be routed across different, much longer pathways on the motherboard, demanding significantly more wattage. Plus, a hard drive is exponentially slower than RAM.
So the CPU is just waiting around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The CPU has to stay awake longer, waiting for data to arrive. The entire system bogs down, fans spin up to cool the working components, and your battery just drains rapidly. Edge's hard limit prevents this physical cascade from ever initiating.
Okay, but wait, I have to push back on this a little bit from an auditing perspective.
Sure, go ahead.
If Edge is actively discarding my tabs when I hit my 15 gigabyte limit, doesn't that disrupt my workflow? Like if I click back to a research paper that Edge has discarded to save RAM, I have to sit there and wait for the whole page to reload from the internet, right?
Right.
Isn't that incredibly annoying compared to Chrome just, keeping it ready?
It can be, yeah. But that slight delay, that fraction of a second it takes for a discarded tab to reload from the network, is an intentional, calculated trade-off. It is the inherent friction of responsible resource management.
Like a necessary evil.
Yeah, Edge is acting as a triage nurse. It sacrifices the immediate readiness of a single background page to prioritize the overall health of the entire operating system. It ensures that the critical functions of your laptop survive, preventing that massive power draw of paging, even if it means a slight inconvenience when you return to a tab you haven't looked at in 2 hours.
That makes sense.
Furthermore, Edge offers nuanced energy saver modes, like balanced or maximum savings, giving you a sliding scale to decide exactly how aggressive that triage nurse should be. Chrome, on the other hand, currently only offers a binary on and off switch.
Okay, I see. It's a survival mechanism for the whole machine, rather than prioritizing one specific application. But here's the burning question, right? Google has some of the most brilliant software engineers on the planet.
Absolutely.
They practically invented the modern web browser architecture. So why does Edge seem to manage Windows hardware so much better than Chrome?
To answer that, we have to look at the structural reality of the ecosystem. Edge has a massive inherent advantage because Microsoft builds both the browser and the Windows operating system it runs on.
The home field advantage.
Exactly. Because they control the entire stack from the user interface all the way down to the operating system's kernel. They can weave them together with proprietary hooks that third-party developers simply cannot access as efficiently.
Right. And the article points out a perfect example of this deep integration. When your laptop's battery drops below a certain percentage, Windows automatically kicks into battery saver mode to preserve the remaining charge.
Yep.
Because Edge is built by Microsoft, it instantly detects this OS level shift and automatically switches itself into its own maximum energy saving mode. It starts throttling background tabs harder without you having to touch a single setting.
It's seamless.
Yeah, and Chrome just cannot do this natively because it doesn't have that direct, deeply integrated handshake with Windows power settings.
And that integration extends heavily into system transparency too, specifically within the Windows Task Manager. If you ever open Task Manager to see what is bogging down your computer, Edge is designed to communicate clearly with Windows. It labels every single tab and background process.
Which is so helpful.
It is. You can see exactly which website or extension is misbehaving. Chrome, conversely, treats itself as a black box relative to Windows. It just lists a dozen identical entries, all labeled Google Chrome.
Oh, it is incredibly frustrating to just see a wall of generic Google Chrome processes consuming 3 gigabytes of memory and not knowing if it's a YouTube video, a broken news site, or a rogue extension.
Right, you're just guessing.
Totally.
Right.
To figure out what Chrome is actually doing, you are forced to open Chrome's internal task manager, which is a completely separate, annoying extra step that most average users don't even realize exists.
And the author, Pankil, utilized this transparency perfectly. He didn't just stop at Edge's default settings. He actively monitored his system and squeezed out that total 20% battery improvement by making specific user tweaks based on what he saw.
Like trimming extensions.
Exactly. He trimmed down his unused extensions, which is a fundamental best practice for any browser.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. One of the biggest tweaks he made wasn't even about web pages. He went into the settings and disabled a feature in Edge called Startup Boost, and he stopped Edge from running in the background after the window was closed.
Yeah, the Startup Boost feature is highly revealing when we examine the motivations of software companies.
How so?
Well, Startup Boost is designed to secretly preload the core components of the Edge browser in the background the exact moment you boot up your computer. The goal is that when you finally click the Edge icon on your desktop, the browser appears instantly, giving the illusion of blazing speed.
The irony is amazing. A feature designed to make the browser feel incredibly fast and responsive to the user is actually secretly draining the laptop's battery in the background while the user is trying to do something entirely different, like, I don't know, edit a video or play a PC game.
It perfectly illustrates how default settings are almost always optimized for perceived speed. They want to win benchmark tests and secure favorable reviews from tech bloggers. Companies want their software to feel instantaneous because speed is marketable.
But that perception of speed often comes at the direct expense of the user's actual hardware longevity and battery life.
It's a classic case of optimizing for the showroom floor rather than the actual highway.
Exactly. So we've established the mechanics from an auditing standpoint. Technically speaking, Edge is demonstrably better for battery life on a Windows machine. The aggressive micronaps, the hard RAM limits, the deep OS integration, it all functions exactly as designed.
It does.
But is this purely a technological triumph? Or is there a darker side to this deep integration? Because when we look at the comment section of the Make Use of article, the community has some very strong, polarizing opinions on this transition.
Yes. And as the wisdom seeker here, the comment section is where the discussion shifts from code efficiency to a much broader philosophical debate about digital ecosystems and user autonomy.
Let's get into it.
First, we need to address a common technical misconception that appeared repeatedly in the comments from users like Arizona, Mentat, and Spencer. There was a heated debate about the underlying engine of these two browsers, with many claiming they are exactly the same thing.
Right, people were saying, oh, Edge uses the Chrome UI, so you are literally just using Chrome with a different logo, but that is fundamentally incorrect.
Entirely incorrect.
Both Edge and Chrome are built on the open source Chromium engine. So the foundational architecture, like how they render HTML and CSS, is the same. But the reason Edge gets better battery life is entirely due to the proprietary management layers, the resource controls, and the OS integration that Microsoft has custom built on top of that Chromium base.
That distinction is crucial. It proves that the core engine isn't the differentiating factor in battery performance. The deciding factor is the philosophy of resource management applied to that engine.
Right.
But beyond the technical architecture, the comments highlight radically diverging user priorities. For instance, a user named Mushy commented that they use Edge primarily because they rely on an ad blocker called uBlock Origin.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're concerned about Google's ongoing efforts to restrict certain ad blocking capabilities within Chrome, so they use Edge as a safe haven for their preferred extension.
And then you have the complete opposite end of the spectrum regarding performance. We just spent all this time talking about how Edge is great for memory, but a user named Joe pushed back entirely.
I remember Joe's comment.
Yeah, he claimed that on his specific system, Edge was eating an astonishing 38 to 43 gigabytes out of his 64 gigabytes of RAM, effectively hoarding resources.
Which is wild.
It really highlights that in the complex world of PC configurations, user experiences vary wildly depending on exactly what sites they visit, what extensions they run, and how their specific hardware interacts with the software.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, the most profound tension in those comments isn't really about RAM usage or ad blockers at all. It is about the trust factor.
Yes. The legacy code of trust, basically.
Exactly. A user named Blue Note made a brilliant observation, arguing that Edge is only efficient because it has 100% access to Windows internals. They framed Microsoft's deep integration not as superior software engineering, but as an unfair advantage built on insider access.
That is a heavy accusation. And another user, Jim, took it even further, stating he refuses to use Edge precisely because it intertwines with Windows so deeply. He expressed a strong desire for Microsoft to allow users to completely uninstall Edge from their machines.
Which is currently very difficult to do natively in Windows.
Basically impossible for the average person.
Yeah. And this specific distrust requires historical context to fully understand. The apprehension we see from users like Blue Note and Jim stems directly from the shadow of Microsoft's browser monopolies in the late 1990s and early 2000s.
The browser wars.
Exactly. During the first major browser war, Microsoft famously bundled Internet Explorer directly into the Windows operating system, making it nearly impossible for average users to remove. This deep integration effectively crippled competitors like Netscape Navigator, leading to a massive antitrust lawsuit brought by the Department of Justice.
So when users see Edge communicating so flawlessly with Windows Battery Saver and the Task Manager, they aren't just seeing battery efficiency. They are seeing the ghosts of that 90s antitrust suit.
Bingo.
They are seeing a company using its operating system dominance to prop up its own web browser.
Precisely. Users are inherently suspicious when the company that builds the foundational operating system also builds the default web browser, and then integrates them so tightly that third-party competitors like Chrome or Firefox are at a structural disadvantage.
It's not a level playing field.
It isn't. It transforms a discussion about battery life into a debate about data privacy, ecosystem lock-in, and whether technical efficiency justifies a lack of user choice.
Which really makes you step back and look at your own setup. Are you willing to hand over your ecosystem entirely to one company just for an extra hour of battery life? Is it a fair fight if Microsoft owns the stadium, the referees, and the rulebook?
It is the ultimate trade-off of the modern digital era. Convenience and efficiency at the hardware level almost always require a consolidation of software power.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate your own hardware? The core takeaway from the sources today in this Gurukul session is pretty clear.
Very clear.
If you are actively struggling with your laptop's battery life, and you are a heavy browser user on a Windows machine, the underlying mechanics are undeniably in Microsoft's favor right now. Switching to a browser that aggressively manages sleeping tabs allows you to set hard resource caps to prevent paging and communicates directly with your operating system's power settings. It can genuinely buy you hours of extra time away from the charging cable.
And as a practical next step from the Antaryami VA Academy, I encourage you to open your own task manager or activity monitor if you are on a Mac sometime today.
Yeah, just open it up and observe.
Exactly. See what your browser is secretly demanding from your machine while it simply sits idle. You might be surprised to find out which tabs and extensions are quietly draining your battery in the background, just treating your hardware's limited resources as an all-you-can-eat buffet.
It is genuinely eye-opening when you actually look at the raw numbers. But as we wrap up this digital stroll, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on that historical friction we saw in the community comments.
It's a big question.
We just spent this entire session proving that deep proprietary operating system integration is incredibly effective at saving battery life. But if that kind of closed-loop integration is the only way to achieve true hardware efficiency, Are we moving toward a future where third-party independent software is fundamentally penalized by the very devices we run them on?
It's a scary thought.
It is. And if the most efficient tools are always the ones built by the platform owners, does true digital choice even exist anymore?